Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Hey, forget Ted Williams. We're batting almost 1,000 here on the Lowell Green Show. Home run every time. I mean, let's face it, less than 24 hours after we raised hell about extending the Emergency Measures Act, guess what? Trudeau says, you know what? Green's mad at me. We better drop it. So he scrapped the Emergency Measures Act. Less than 24 hours after I raised hell about it. Now, less than 24 hours again after I raised hell asking why Canada isn't doing more to help Ukraine. Lo and behold, almost everything that I suggested has come to pass, okay? We're shipping real weapons. Well, not very many, but real weapons at least, off to the very brave Ukrainian fighters. I hope they arrive there in time to help them. We're banning Russia from taking part in the World Junior Championships to be held this August in Edmonton, thank God. And wonder of wonders, Trudeau is banning the purchase of Russian oil. It's unbelievable. The only thing he didn't do that he should, and I hope he does today, is kick the Russian bastards out of this country. I mean, most of those who are in the so-called diplomatic corps, ambassador staff, they're all spies anyway. I mean, they should be booted out. By the way, I really got a kick out of the fact that there was a demonstration on the weekend in front of the Russian embassy, and Russia is really, really offended. You've got they apparently in Moscow they called why we still have Canadians in Moscow beats the hell out of me. But apparently, somebody called our Russian ambassador in Moscow and complained bitterly. They said, you must guarantee the safety of Russian citizens in Ottawa. So they're really, really upset, which indicates to me if they're really upset, why don't we make them even more upset? Am I allowed to do that? Recommend that we, whatever, you do whichever you do. This is a free country, folks. Do whatever you want. I just want to remind you that petitioning and picketing in front of the Russian embassy really pisses them off. Unbelievable. As I mentioned yesterday, the one good thing that may come from this terrible tragedy that is befalling the innocent citizens of Ukraine is it may speed up the process in this country, finally, of making us energy self-sufficient. I can tell you right now that the Conservatives are hot after this. There were a number of questions yesterday. Of course, Trudeau doesn't answer. The questions I think are very fair. When is Canada going to become energy self-sufficient? Which is a hell of a good question. John, you were mentioning the fact when we were talking about this, the fact that Canada, with enough oil to supply almost the entire world's needs, certainly sufficient oil to supply our own needs, the fact that we are buying foreign oil. In fact, last year, I did some more checking. It's hard to get the exact figure, but last year we bought, believe it or not, about $15 billion worth of foreign oil. And about $500 million of that was from Russia. A rather small percent, but still $500 million gone into the pockets, the bloody pockets of that bastard Putin. But $15 billion sucked out of this country to foreign oil manufacturers, drillers, etc., which is $15 billion that should have stayed in this country to pay Canadian salaries, etc. I mean, that is a sin. And as you pointed out, John, do you think that Saudi Arabia is buying foreign oil?
Exactly.
Do you think Russia is buying foreign oil?
Exactly.
Well, why the hell are we buying foreign oil, for God's sake?
Thank you. That's my question. Exactly.
Suck. I mean, it is so ridiculous. So the pressure is on, and I hope it really stays. And I hope that you who are listeners, I hope that you apply some of this pressure, okay? To start energy east, speed up construction of the Trans Mountain, and force Biden to approve the Keystone, but particular energy east. Now, I know that there's some. We have a call coming in from San Francisco, do we?
San Diego.
San Diego. All right. Let's go. Who's on the line, please?
That'd be JF. Go ahead. You're on with Lowell Green.
Yes, JF. What's on your mind?
Hey, Lowell.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a time right now to thank you. Since the age of 25, I've been listening to you from CFRA, and you really got me interested in politics.
Good.
And what really makes me really, really sad is you have a wonderful show, and everybody has opinions, but nobody's calling in. I don't understand why I, from California, care more about voicing my opinions about Canada. And, yes, it's embarrassing to be online. Everybody to hear you. I might stand, but I have an opinion. And Canadians have to swallow their pride, put themselves out there, and voice out their opinions. In fact,
we'd like to take. We'd
other
like
people.
We'd like to take more calls. We do. I must say that I think maybe this is an age now where people are using text and so forth. We get hundreds and hundreds of responses via text. Listen, I don't have much time here. I appreciate your call and I appreciate your support, sir. Thank you for the call. Now, one of the reasons that we've got to become energy self-sufficient is not only to help ourselves, but to help Europe. Let me point out that if we had Energy East completed, not only would we be energy sufficient here, we could keep our $15 billion in this country, provide thousands of jobs, et cetera, but we could and should be helping Europe. One of the most powerful weapons that Putin has right now on Europe is that he supplies some of the oil and a good deal of the natural gas that fuels several European countries. If he were to shut this off, there would be widespread hardship in many countries in Europe, chaos in some cases. So this is a weapon. So my question is, not only should we become self-sufficient here, but we should be in a position where we can sell our oil and gas, natural gas, to Europe so that some of those European countries can rely less on Russia. So there are two reasons here why we need to finish Energy East. Make ourselves self-sufficient, save ourselves billions of dollars, and help Europe, and in the process, help Ukraine. There's no question in my mind that there would be more assistance for Ukraine coming from European countries if they weren't in danger of having their fuel supply cut off. Because we are not selling any of our oil or gas, because the environmentalists won't let us, because we're not selling any to Europe, it leaves that market wide open for Russia, and Russia has stepped in. While we have been busy building windmills and shutting down pipelines and oil, Russia has been building more pipelines, drilling more and more oil, and selling more and more of it to Europe, giving him that terrible weapon in Europe. I just point that out, okay? All you environmentalists, all you lefties out there who think you're doing a wonderful thing, well, I just want to point out, among other things, you are depriving Canadians of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars, and you are depriving Europe of much needed Canadian oil and gas. So let me point out that despite some of the rumors, these stories are floated by foreign oil interests. Hey, do you think the Saudi Arabia oil interests, do you think the American oil interests, do you think the Russian oil interests want Canada to become an exporter of oil? Or do you think they want to keep Canadian oil in the ground so that they can sell Europe, et cetera, their oil? What do you think? This is where the pressure comes. So the big lie is, oh, well, it's dirty oil. Let me point something out. And check this out yourself. Today, because of advanced technology, the oil produced from the oil sands in Alberta is now the cleanest, is now the cheapest to produce that we have. And not only that, is the most environmentally friendly. Check it out. See, the emissions from the oil industry in Alberta has been falling. Do you know, let me ask you this. If you really are worried about global warming, do you think that they care about the emissions from the oil industry in Russia? Do you think they care about emissions from the oil industry in Saudi Arabia? But they do care about emissions, the oil industry in Alberta. So why is it that Alberta oil is the one that's being cut off? Now, I know that there's a good deal of, we'll get to the text in a moment. I know there is still confusion about the whole oil. I'm going to be as brief as possible. And I'm covering, for some of you people, you've heard this before. But there's considerable confusion exactly what is Energy East. Let me just go back. All of Canada, up to about half of Quebec, is supplied by Canadian oil, much of it from Alberta, Saskatchewan. Okay? Ontario and about half of Quebec is supplied by Line 5, the infamous Line 5, which comes through northern Michigan underneath the Straits of Mackinac and to the giant refineries in Sarnia, where it is made, by the way, the oil, gas, but life-saving pharmaceuticals. Sometimes, I hear people talking about big pharma. Hey, big pharma is keeping me alive. Big pharma is keeping a lot of people alive. Drugs that we use to fight cancer, the drugs that we for heart problems, everything. I mean, from your toothpaste, this and much of this is refined at Sarnia from Alberta oil. So Line 5 supplies Ontario and about half Quebec with the oil and gas. It all comes from Alberta. But east, about halfway from Quebec, right through to the Maritime provinces, they don't have access to Alberta oil. So they have to rely on imported oil. Now, Energy East is this. About a half a mile, and John, you've seen this, you've driven over it, but a half a mile from where I am now broadcasting is a giant pipeline coming all the way from Alberta right down through along the northern route, north of Lake Superior, through the Canadian Shield, all Canadian route, this giant pipeline from Alberta all the way down to Cornwall or near Cornwall. Today, that pipeline carries natural gas. You burn natural gas, probably comes from that. Okay? So the plan for Energy East was this. Take the natural gas out of that pipeline, the existing pipeline, replace it with oil. And we apparently have other sources for natural gas. So in other words, if we did that, we then would have Alberta oil, wouldn't have to go through Line 5, which Michigan wants to shut off. We would have oil going through all Canadian route, all the way from Alberta down to Cornwall. And then the plan was to build a new pipeline from Cornwall through to 2 refineries just east of Montreal, and then on to St. John, New Brunswick, the giant Irving refinery. Thus it is that if we did that, all we have to do to complete Energy East is just build a pipeline from Cornwall through to St. John, New Brunswick. And we have total self-sufficiency, energy self-sufficiency. We are able to export oil to help Europe, etc., and help put another bullet in, well, and help defeat Putin. All right, that's all that's required. The line already exists. And by the way, I've heard reports. Oh well, you're going to put a pipeline. It might affect property values. Actually, it improves property values because when the pipeline is underground and it's beautifully manicured on top. You drive over it here. Almost every day I go by, even during the wintertime. What's out on the lawn? I can see as far as it is way up there. Deer. In the summertime, they're out there grazing with their little fawns and so forth. In the wintertime, they're there. A couple of people have salt licks out there, and it's wonderful. Let me just point out, as far as home prices, land values, there is a property within a half a mile of where I am right now. Nice home, no question about it, 3 acres. Borders on this pipeline. It just sold for $1.79 million. So much for lowering property values, okay? Unbelievable. So that's the situation, folks. That's what I am saying is, some of you environmentalists are good people. You've been misguided, misled. Please understand, there is a desperate need to become energy self-sufficient. We're seeing what's happening in Europe now. These European, instead of devising their own means, nuclear or whatever, or gas, to develop their own power, they instead built windmills, solar panels, and had to buy their fuel from Russia. So now they're in Russia's pocket. We're right now. Listen. Without Energy East, if we didn't have foreign oil, then half of Quebec and all of the maritime provinces would have no fuel, no gas, no oil. That they rely entirely on foreign. Well, we have all that we need in Alberta. So please make ourselves self-sufficient, energy self-sufficient. Keep the billions of dollars in this country, employ Canadians, and at the same time help Europe to get out of Russia's pocket. Is that asking a hell of a lot? John, what have we got? We got some response, I understand.
We do. Can I ask a quick question?
Fire away.
Newfoundland has quite the oil and gas industry.
Yes.
What becomes of the oil and gas we pump out of Newfoundland off the coast there?
You know what? A little bit of it does end up in Irving, but for the life of me, I guess Newfoundland supplies itself pretty well. They have a refinery there, so I haven't really investigated that. But I would imagine that Newfoundland and Labrador they supply their own. That's why, if you notice, when I said the maritime province, I'm not including Newfoundland.
Good boy. My mother-in-law would be proud of you.
Yeah.
She's had to explain to me for a number of years the difference between Maritimes and Newfoundland. Newfoundland is not part of the Maritimes.
That's right. So it's the Atlantic province. I call it the Atlantic provinces, and about half of Quebec. And by the way, when I say half of Quebec, this is very interesting because it was under actually Harper that Quebec was supplied. About half of Quebec was supplied with Alberta oil. Prior to Stephen Harper, 100% of Quebec and 100% of the Atlantic provinces relied on foreign oil alone. It was Harper who managed to put a pipeline through to the two refineries just east of Montreal. So they supply about half of Quebec. By the way, I must also point something else out. With Energy East, don't forget, we have this existing pipeline runs close to where I am. They would have oil going down through to Cornwall. So if something happened and Line 5 did break, or Michigan got it cut off, or whatever, we would not still have Western oil in Cornwall. And there is a pipeline actually from pretty well from Cornwall through to Sarnia. So we would be able to get it if we had Energy East, would in a pinch provide us in Ontario with oil. That's just one more advantage of why we desperately need Energy East. Energy East would make us self-reliant, including the province of Ontario. We would not have to rely on Line 5, which is still, by the way, in the courts right now. Go ahead, John. Let's see what we've got here.
And it sounds like we'd solve a problem for Europe as well and maybe make some money.
It would certainly help Europe. There's no question about it.
613-413-2217. Yes, we invite your calls always. 613-413-2217. You can text as well. Here's one from the 403 area code, so that's Calgary. We sanctioned Russian oil. The Western world is in high demand for oil. Canadians need oil. Canada is the fourth largest oil producer in the world and the most environmental regulated oil country in the world. Yes, Canada's oil industry respects the environment. We can't supply the world and replace Russian oil because we have no pipelines. When our allies need us and we can't help, who is to blame? I hope all the liberals and left-wing environmentalists are pleased with themselves and their radical environmental decisions they have made. Folks, it's too late to help with the liberals in power.
You know what? You're bang on, sir. I could not have read it better than that. You're absolutely right. The environmentalists may be misled, maybe misunderstood, but today they should hang their head in shame. You have, among other things, taken jobs away from Canadians, taken billions of dollars away from Canadians, and you have helped Putin. How else can you look at it? I'd love to hear from some of you lefties. How else can you put it? Okay? It was your pressure that stopped Energy East, your pressure that has slowed down the Trans Mountain so much it's doubtful if it will ever be finished. It was your pressure, much of it financed, by the way, by American money. Go ahead, John.
David says the Toronto Star has a story about who buys Newfoundland oil. Apparently, the U.S. buys a lot, but some is shipped to Croatia. And Christine is on the other side of things. Lowell, get ready. She says, how do you feel about more electric vehicle charging stations? Do you know that there are already EV charging stations from coast to coast along the Trans-Canada? This should get you going, Lowell, she says.
Well, yeah, the charging stations. I'd like to know, are the taxpayers paying for that? There's another, I've asked this question before and never got an answer. The roads, bridges, infrastructure, et cetera, is largely paid for by motorists through the exorbitant taxes we pay every time we buy a liter of gasoline. So if we all switch to electric vehicles and no longer buy gasoline, where do we get the money to build the roads, repair the roads? So if you people buying electric vehicles think that you're going to be able to get away with cheap electricity or maybe free electricity, think again. Somebody has got to pay for the roads. And if you're going to be driving on the roads, electric vehicle or not, it's you that's going to have to pay for it. Don't ever kid yourself. Go ahead, sir.
In marketing, they have what they call a loss leader, and that whole electric push right now seems to me like a loss leader. Let's get people into it, and we'll deal with the circumstances later. Coraline says $15 billion would buy a lot of health care. Melissa says, Lowell, what is your opinion on the digital ID coming to Ontario?
I don't want to talk about it right now. I don't really understand it. Let's deal with it. Can we not please deal with this issue right now?
Fair enough.
I don't think there's anything more crucial right now in light of what's happening than we make ourselves self-sufficient, energy self-sufficient. I think this is absolutely crucial. I think that and healthcare are the two major issues facing us today. Let's deal with that, please. I'll deal with that later. Go ahead, please, John.
Yep. Another text in at 613-413-2217. If our oil industry was nationalized but run privately by Canadian companies, why would we not offer Canadians cheaper prices than we sell it for? Clear diesel fuel looks like water, but you better not drink, and it's only used in jet aircraft. Okay. Peter says, Lowell, Greta would ask, how dare you? Okay. Lowell, we buy oil because we are virtue signaling green idealist liberals. As for you saying to send the Russians home, yes, the diplomatic ones, but the Russians living here do so to get away from Putin. We can't send them back. That's just like internment camps for the Japanese. I agree. Ramp up our oil production and supply the world bypassing Russia.
No, excuse me. Still don't get it. We don't need to ramp up oil production. We've got plenty of oil. We need to be able to get that oil to the East Coast. Please understand. There's still this confusion. I still have people say, well, we need more refineries. We need this. And it's no. We've got the refineries. In fact, the two refineries in Quebec, half the time, they're about half empty because they can't get enough oil to supply them. All we need, for Christ's sake, all we need is a pipeline from Cornwall to St. John, New Brunswick. We become energy self-sufficient. We save ourselves billions of dollars. We hire thousands of people, and we help Europe and Ukraine. One pipeline from Cornwall to St. John, New Brunswick. That's all I'm asking. That's all that's required, folks. Nothing else. We don't need to take out the sand. We don't need to have more refineries. We don't need this, that. All we need is a pipeline, one freaking pipeline, Cornwall to St. John, New Brunswick. Hey. Go ahead, John. I don't know what it takes for people to understand. Go ahead, John.
Yep, it's only a 10-hour drive, too, so it's not like we have a huge gap there. Your friend JF from California chimes back in to say in California, due to the push of electric cars and loss of revenue of the gas tax, they will be imposing a mileage tax.
Oh, sure. It's got to happen.
Yep. Peter says, get the pipeline built, end of argument. Lowell is 1,000% right. Speaking of Lowell being right, could you tell us a story about your friends at Shields? You're always right about Shields, Lowell.
Well, essentially what I'm saying is, can we not please just use some common sense and drop ideology? And when it comes to common sense, you're talking about, there's a typical example of common sense. Since 1947, Shields has been operating there in the Ottawa Valley and now increasingly into Ottawa and the St. Lawrence Valley, by the way, because they use common sense. They say, you know what? People need a reliable supply from people that they can trust, and this is what they've done. Shields. What else can I say other than very fair pricing, good people, honest. If they tell you something, they'll come through with it. Shields.ca. Go ahead, John.
All right, another text in moments ago. Okay, we get the pipeline. The Liberals won't still try to restrict oil consumption?
Well, restrict oil consumption all you want. That's fine. But don't deny people on the East Coast the right to use. You realize that in the process, you are denying people in Quebec and the Atlantic provinces the right to buy oil from their own country. If you don't have the pipeline, they can't. People in Nova Scotia, your favorite province, they don't have the right, the opportunity to buy oil from their own country. That's what you environmentalists have done. Go ahead, John.
Ann says, if only we could go airborne with that pipeline over Quebec. All right, Peter's on Facebook. He says the U.S. was fine up until when Biden canceled the deal on the U.S. side like Trudeau did in Canada, more political than anything else. We need to employ Canadians and supply Canada with its own oil first. Such a mess. Stupid Trudeau to blame for it here.
I have no question.
All right, Jean-Francois, oil is not for cars, but essential for the manufacturing solvents, diesel fuel, motor oil, bearing grease, ink, floor, wax, ball point, bends, football cleats. He goes on with a long list there. And says, I think people aren't calling, meaning calling your show, because we like listening to what Lowell has to say. It is a bit intimidating. We are not you, Lowell.
I know I'm intimidating. I
you
know,
really
I know
are.
that.
So intimidating. It's all I can do to get on here every single day and deal with you.
Okay.
By the way, folks, I control the phone, not Lowell this time around. Okay.
But you know what? I really appreciate the response that we're getting. I mean, we're overwhelmed with texts and so forth. I really appreciate that.
You're right. And by virtue of it being on the internet too, Lowell, and because people watch on Facebook and on YouTube, etc., it's natural, I think, for people to type a comment as opposed to pick up the phone and call. I get it.
Yep.
Anyway, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead with more. Let's hear what more people have to say.
Over on Twitch, Lawrence Review Terry says the oil from Russia is now blood oil. Anne says the lefties opposing pipelines have to get it through their thick heads that over 4,000 products in everyday use are made from petroleum. Oil is not going anywhere. And we have to get smarter.
That's a very good point. Someone else has referred to this. I don't think many people understand the uses that we put oil to. I talked about drugs. I have a number of drugs. I mean, every heart patient in this country, and there are millions of us, we take drugs. And for the most part, those drugs are derived from oil. Just as one example, many of the pharmaceutical items but everything. I got a email the other day from a guy who was complaining. He said all he does is just ride his bike. And so I said, well, I listed probably all the parts on his bicycle that are probably derived from oil. He couldn't believe it. Let's go to BC. Butch, you're on CFRA.
Lowell, stop that.
You're on Blast the Radio. Yes, Butch, what's on your mind here, sir?
Hey, it's Butch.
Go ahead, sir.
How are you doing today?
Right to the topic, sir, please. Yeah.
Oh, you don't have a whole lot of time. I do understand you're an older guy. You don't have a whole lot of time left. I wanted to talk about
kiss my ass. You know what?
Bye, Butch. Bye.
You don't come on here and insult me. You know what? My age got nothing. You know what? I may be 85, but I'm just as sharp as you are any day. Go ahead. What else have we got?
Look at our $5, $10, $20, $50, $100 bills in your wallet. They are oil-based, says Peter. That pipeline you talk about was put in the late 70s, early 80s by OJ Pipeline. My uncle was, where'd it go? My uncle was part of that project through Ontario, says Stephen. Barry is calling in. Shall we take a call from Barry, Lowell?
We're too late. Well, let's get Barry tomorrow. Sorry.
All right, Barry. Sorry about that. We've had a couple of comments from Barry already via text. Let me see. Let's go back to Coraline. She says, I would rather live beside a pipeline than the 3 giant turbines that surround my property now. There you go.
You've got to understand, when we're talking about a pipeline, we're talking it's underground, okay? And just it's covered over with grass. You can plant gardens on top of it, et cetera, et cetera. That's it. I think people somehow think, oh, it's going to be above ground. It's going to be ugly, and deer won't be able. No, it's underground. You don't see it. You know what? I'll bet you that most of the people living in this area here who drive by this pipeline have no idea they are driving by a pipeline.
Until you pointed it out, Lowell, and I've driven to your house how many times now? At least a dozen?
And you had no idea.
I still have I have an idea roughly geographically where it is, but I couldn't tell you exactly.
Yeah, it's about, you know what, the pipeline runs, it's about maybe 3/4 of a kilometer west of Canada.
So
go ahead.
where that CBC listening station is, it's an old barn. It's on Richardson Side Road, so right near the Cheshire Cats. So we're talking what, west of there, north?
West of there.
Yeah, west of there. Okay.
Yep. And it's there, and it essentially follows the Ottawa River down through to just about Cornwall, where as I say, that's the distribution for natural gas. The idea is, and it's quite easy to do apparently, take the natural gas out, run oil through it, and then put another pipeline build a new pipeline from Cornwall through to St. John's to supply all of Quebec and all of the Atlantic provinces with Alberta oil. Yeah, pretty simple. Not a major project, okay? Not disruptive at all. Not in no way is it ugly or anything. No, it's underground. Thank you all, folks. We will be back. Oh no, actually, I have to take tomorrow off, but we'll be back on Thursday. Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.